to take you back to the mid-1990s, growing up in multicultural West London, when I was around 10 years old and I became absolutely captivated by a television ad. Not for the clothes, for the message. It was a Gap ad. People from different nationalities, skin tones, backgrounds, dancing shoulder to shoulder as if they'd always existed together. And I remember thinking, how beautiful. That's the world I want to live in. A world where difference wasn't just tolerated, but celebrated. It was idealistic, but I allowed myself to feel naivety watching those ads. 10-year-old me was convinced that we would solve world peace through cargo pants and car keys. Or as you Americans say, khakis. But today, it doesn't feel naive. It feels necessary. It feels urgent, because somewhere along the way, we've lost that sense of unity. And nowhere is this more evident than in our workplaces, where we spend most of our waking hours trying to fit into cultures that were never designed for many of us. We talk about culture everywhere, from legislative debates, to job interviews, to corporate strategy meetings, and we frame it as something we can legislate, control, own. But culture isn't a possession. It's a conversation. When we treat culture as possession, we get division. When we treat it as a conversation, we get innovation. When we try to own it, we kill it. But when we participate in it, we bring it to life. My childhood taught me what it costs when belonging comes with conditions, and that sparked my mission to ensure others wouldn't have to shrink themselves to fit in. And now I work with organizations to create cultures where everyone can bring their true selves to work. But too often, I watch companies stifle the very uniqueness they need to thrive, treating culture like a rule book rather than a living ecosystem. I've worked with organizations from Tokyo to Toronto, and everywhere I see the same pattern, culture being guarded rather than grown. Let me share a more personal story with you all. My father is British Nigerian. My mother is Nigerian British. It sounds the same, but I promise you it's very different. You try and sit between them during the soccer World Cup, and you know exactly what I mean when you start to feel the heat. Growing up between cultures, I was caught with aunties telling me that I had forgotten where I'd come from. I'm becoming biddy at school because my name, Abidemi, was too difficult for English tongues. For many of us, our names are the first identifying features of our existence. I was born Abidemi. Through my school years, I was Biddy. And I stand before you as Abby, not as a way to assimilate or to fit in, but as a way to reclaim my story. And I'll be very honest with you all. Choosing Abby wasn't immediately triumphant. By age 30, I'd lost count of how many times I had been rejected after a job interview for not being the right cultural fit. Apparently, my love for jollof rice wasn't the cultural fit they were looking for. And the feedback was always the same. Not the right cultural fit. Doesn't quite match our vibe. And I soon began to realize that their culture fit just meant people exactly like them. James Baldwin once said, "You've got to tell the world how to treat you. If the world tells you how you are going to be treated, you are in trouble." But what happens when you're too young, too outnumbered, or simply too tired to keep fighting when even at work you are still being asked to make yourself smaller? You shrink. It's isolating, and trust me, it is exhausting. Because when culture is treated as exclusive property, it demands conformity. And our obsession with cultural ownership creates invisible borders. Borders that invite those who belong and rejects those who do not. I've seen this play out many times in organizations. A company will invest millions of dollars trying to impose culture through compliance. They'll hold workshops and draft empty value statements, and what follows is a checklist that turns belonging into a performance. And soon employees feel like they have to check boxes in order to feel accepted. The results? Creativity dies, innovation stops, and your best people leave. Contrast this with organizations that have truly evolved. Take Pixar's brain trust meetings. Instead of traditional hierarchical review process, space is given where anyone can candidly critique any project. No politics, just honest and respectful feedback in service of the story. The magic is they lead with vulnerability. Directors, they talk about their messy, unfinished projects, and animators admit what isn't working. That vulnerability didn't weaken their culture, it revealed it. Pixar chose conversation over control. And that's the difference between imposing culture and cultivating it. So how do we take steps towards a shared culture at work? First, we shift the frame. Stop thinking of culture as a blueprint. When Spotify scaled globally, they didn't impose Swedish corporate culture. Instead, they created culture jams where teams from Sao Paulo to Stockholm shared their ways of working, letting a truly global culture emerge. 2, reimagine success. Don't measure culture by how well people adapt to your norms. Measure it by how well it welcomes, evolves, and celebrates diverse inputs. Stop tracking culture fit and start measuring culture add. And 3, welcome productive friction. Yes. Teams that actively seek out opposing views, that discomfort is growth, not decay. Make these 3 shifts and watch culture transform from property to wonderful possibility. Remember that gap ad? I realize now what captivated my younger self. It wasn't just the difference, beautiful as they were, but it was the ease. No one was defending their territory. No one was performing their culture. They were simply existing together. Here's what 10-year-old Biddy saw that we've forgotten. Culture isn't something we perfect. It is something we practice. And the only thing standing between us and that world is our obsession with ownership. We are so busy fighting over who culture belongs to, we've forgotten it only exists in the space between us. Culture isn't about what we control. It's about what we collectively make. When each person contributes, the mosaic grows more beautiful, the meaning deepens, the connection becomes real, and suddenly, we're not fighting over culture anymore because we are seeing what's possible. Now, imagine if we did this beyond our office walls. In the UK, we debate what British culture even is. I don't know. And in the US, we argue over whose version of America is the real one. It's the same everywhere. When culture is property, acceptance becomes conditional. We must allow culture to be a mirror for every face and a megaphone for every voice, not a prize for possession. So I leave you with this. We can keep arguing over who owns culture, or we can participate in creating it together. Because in the end, we bloom together or we wilt alone. Thank you.